G'day, Brett here, and today I want to step through how to change a mower blade on Husqvana TS342 rider mower. Let's get into it. So apologies for a bit of the noise. You'll hear some rain on the shed roof. We're having a pretty wet few weeks, actually probably a wet couple of months. It is our wet season down here at the moment, but so there will be a little bit of noise unfortunately when the rain is hitting that tin roof. But what I'd like to do is have a look at the mower blade. So this is clearly an old blade that you can see here. And the reason I have a spare old blade is because I have bent one of these blades once before. And that's the reason why I'm actually changing out the blade today, because I've bent yet another one. And it seems a bit annoying that I keep bending blades, but you'd have to ask, how do I keep bending blades? Because they're fairly thick. You can see that thickness is fairly thick there. They're fairly robust sort of blades. But the first time I bent a blade was I figured that I would be just mowing over the twigs. And some of the twigs actually got a little bit bigger than twigs, and it just got caught up under the deck of the mower and actually bent the blade. This one, however, not this one, but the one that's on there currently, so actually, when I changed the blades last time, I actually bought a matching pair, so they're both brand new at the same time. And I reckon probably 3 or 4 mows into my brand new blades, I just picked up a tree root that I don't normally pick up, unfortunately. And unfortunately, like that's life. Trees move around, the ground moves around, and this tree root was just probably sticking up a little bit higher than it would normally, or it used to do anyway, and it bent the blade. And it's just gradually gotten worse and worse. And now it's just digging into the ground, as you can see by some of the photos. So this is the old blade, the old bent one I threw out, but this is the old straight one. And so, but before I put it on, I'm just going to give it a quick sharpen, I reckon, so that way it's going to be reasonably matched to the other blades, because the other blades are still fairly new. Like, they haven't done a lot of work. So this one did do a fair bit of work. This has probably got, probably about 100 hours on it. So I will give it a quick sharpen up, and then we'll start pulling it apart. So before you start any of this sort of work, use some safety equipment. Now this is just some leather gloves that I do like to put on. I am sharpening a metal blade. It does already have an edge on it. And sometimes it's not always the sharp stuff that cuts, it's also the blunt stuff that cuts. And those cuts get nasty. So I'm just going to use a file, sharpen up quickly. I do have an angle grinder over there which I probably could use, but I think the file today will do the trick just nicely. Yeah, look, I was wrong about just filing it. Look, I did file it for a while. It wasn't making much progress, so I ripped the generator out, started it up, got the grinder going, and then cleaned it up that way. Much better, much quicker, and did the job. So here it is. The Husqvana TS342. And you'll notice I've already put some cardboard down, so it's a bit of prep work. It's obviously a lot easier to put the cardboard down before you bring the mower in. Also, you don't want to be trying to lift the mower up to put cardboard underneath it. Now, there's a couple of reasons I do that. One is that we are in the middle of winter and that concrete is going to be freezing cold when I start lying down on it on my back for a little while. The other reason is that it just stops a lot of mud and dirty grass and stuff falling all over the slab, which just makes it a little bit easier to clean up. I'm not saying that I'm OCD. Maybe I am a little bit. But it just makes things a lot easier and a lot easier to keep clean. So before I start, there's a couple of things I'm going to need to do. So to make it a little bit easier to get underneath it, I'm actually going to jack it up and put it on some stands at the back, and that'll just give me some more space to get underneath it, so I'm not scraping my knuckles all the time. So let's get into it. So there it is, on a couple of stands. So I'm not too sure if you can actually see the gap between the base of the deck and that blade over there, but if you have a look across to the next blade, the
the gap between the deck is only a few mil, whereas this one is a lot more. So the blade itself actually looks pretty straight, to be honest. But you can just start to see that little bit of a bend down there, which it bends away from, it creates this gap here. If you go across to the next blade, it's up a lot higher. And that's the only thing that really just you can distinguish and say what's actually wrong with it. Because I know the first time I hopped underneath, when I bent the blade the first time, I thought, gee, those blades look all right. And I actually started adjusting the deck, but I didn't do the spin test to see how much gap was between the blade and the bottom of the deck. But if we spin this blade all the way around, I'll get this out of the way here for you. You can see this blade come across that part of the, well actually I can't even get it up there, so that's how close it goes to the, you can see how close that gap is there, like we only got a few mil there. So definitely a bent blade. Now to get this off, I need to take this nut, and this is a 16mm nut. That comes off, as with this little cover thing here as well. And then we just swap the blade over. Actually, it's a fairly simple process once you can break that nut off though. I don't break the nut, but you know, break the seal on the nut.
So this is a simple process. You notice that I have already broken the seal on the nut, so it's pretty easy to undo. It's almost finger loose at the moment, so I can undo it with my fingers, but I'm using the socket there to take it off. As I said, it's a 16mm socket. Make sure you go anti-clockwise to undo it if you don't do a lot of mechanical work. Some people do get confused, and especially if it's tight, I'm not too sure which way to start, so make sure you always go anti-clockwise. So you can see the difference in the blade. So that's the old straight one, and this is the newer bent one. And like just the way they sit on the ground is completely different. You can see how this one's got that bend in it, and just it's actually sitting up a lot higher here, which is what's digging into the ground and causing those massive big divots. And like it actually digs in that hard that it'll actually stop the motor. So it's a fairly significant bend. Look, it doesn't actually look that much when you look at it like that, but when you're trying to go over flat ground or even slightly uneven ground, flat ground's probably okay, but when you get to the uneven ground, it just digs in and it's all over. So to refit the new blade is fairly straightforward. The shaft that you fit it onto is actually a spline shaft, and the blade is actually cut to suit that. But what I ran into here was a problem where, because the old blade, the bent blade, was digging into the ground, it had actually burred the spline shaft. So what it meant was that I couldn't fit my new blade back on because it wasn't a nice neat fit anymore. So what that led me to have to do was, you would have seen another video where I did the unboxing of the Dremel 4000. I bought that particularly or specifically for this reason. Like that spline shaft was burred over, and because of the angle, because of the shape of it, it's next to impossible to get a file into it to file that back. I couldn't use a big angle grinder because it would have just made a mess underneath. I didn't want to pull the deck off and pull it all apart, which means, you know, all the pulleys and all that sort of stuff just to get to the shaft. And I also felt that if I was to take it to the mower shop, that's probably what they would have done, and they would have charged me a lot of money. Not to mention that it's a 2-hour drive with the mower in a trailer all the way into the mower shop and another 2 hours back. So essentially I'll lose a day or half a day either side. Best part of your day is gone because it's a 4-hour round trip, and like they will keep it for a week anyway. So that's what prompted me to buy the Dremel and grind it back to fit it properly. Now you will have seen this footage in the unboxing of the Dremel 4000. Look, great tool, and what I particularly like is that flexible shaft, and because of the small fittings and the tools, look, it's just perfect for this type of work. And the reason why I went for the Dremels is that I had used them before in my job at work, when I used to work in doing deeper maintenance on aircraft. In the workshop we used to have a couple of Dremels that we used. Look, great great tool and it did the job perfectly. It just cleaned it up. It allowed me to get underneath there, get the angles right, and clean it up sufficiently enough to get that blade back on. So there you go, that spline shaft is all cleaned up. I was able to put the blade back on, and look, here's a quick fit. Just fit it back over the spline and tighten up the nut. So look, another job is done. The mower is back on the paddock and cutting grass. So if you've enjoyed that, please give us a big thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please subscribe, because that does help the channel to grow. And as always, if you think one of your friends might like it, please share it with them. So until next time, I'll see you then.